everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know everybody of you would have at some point of time wanted to develop the habit of reading every day, or in fact somehow increase the habit of reading more books, but it would never happened. It could have had many reasons. Maybe you did not find the right book, the books were not interesting, the books were too long, the books were too boring, though they were the famous books. So don't worry, no more excuses, because in today's video I will be talking about 7 famous books by Indian authors which are less than 200 pages. So let's get started. The first book that I want to talk about is by the very famous late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam sir. It's The Wings of Fire. I know this is one of the most talked about book and is extremely popular, and many of you might have also read this book. But if you are one of those who have not yet read, I will tell you reasons why you should definitely consider reading this book. First of all, it is by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam sir. This is a story of a young boy from Ramanathapuram, and it explains how a simple boy from a lower middle class family is able to achieve his dreams and follow his passion to become the aerospace engineer. So this is in times of early 1960s and 70s. So it is extremely inspiring and motivating to see how Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam sir was able to overcome all those obstacles and reach and achieve his passion. Moreover, when you read this book, you will also be inspired, because across this period of his journey, you will also be learning a lot more about how India has progressed in spite of less opportunities, in spite of less economic freedom when compared to many other developed countries. Even though India is still being in a developing nation category, how India was able to feature and enter into the race of so many important categories which was classified to be eligible only for the developed nations. So this is one important book that you should all consider reading at some point of your time. The book that I want to talk about is The Village by Sea by Anita Desai. So this book primarily is about a family of 6 people. I think it is a fisherman community which is living in India. So the core theme of this book is how industrialization has impacted the crores of people who are still working in agriculture and such sectors, and how it has had an impact on their day-to-day life and activities. So basically the father loses the job and is thrown into poverty lines because of unconditional circumstances, and the mom is unable to cater to the needs of the family because she is falling ill. How the elder daughter and son is forced to take the responsibility of parenting the entire family and taking into control the situation is what the stories are all about. When you read the story, you will be surprised, because it will throw you some random acts of kindness from unexpectedly from, you can say, the neighbors, from every point of time. So what you will realize apparently is that anything, even if it is a small act of kindness from your point of view, it could have a major impact. It could have been of a major help on that particular family. So this is a wonderful book. It ends in a very positive note that regardless of what might have been the problems of the family, how the family has able to survive even during times of great despair and problems is what this book is all about. I consider this one book to be a very important book because it talks about some of the important stories of the majority population of India. Third book that I want to talk about is The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I know this is one of the most important books and highly talked about books all across the world. It is highly acclaimed because, number one, I consider this book extremely interesting and exciting, because when you read the title of this book, it says a monk and he sold his Ferrari. So that is completely contradicting, because in India you don't consider, or you've never seen a monk driving a Ferrari. So this is a story of a man who has been very successful in his career, having a 6-figure salary, but is never happy in his life. He wants to go and seek freedom and wisdom. So he does not want the conventional modes of success that we all, or generally the majority population, looks for. that is financial independence and being able to sustain irrespective dependence, which majority of the population looks for across the world. So this man goes out in search of wisdom and freedom from the society. So what he does is, first of all, he sells his Ferrari and goes to the Himalayas. He goes in search of monks, sadhus, and he meets one such sadhu who is giving him 7 virtues that, when followed, will help him find the wisdom that he's searching for. What I love about this book is one thing, that basically this is a non-fiction book. But what Robin Sharma, the author of this book, has beautifully done is he has inculcated a lot of fictional aspects to make this book more interesting. So with a storyline brought into the book, it is more enjoyable for you to understand what are the 7 virtues, and it is easier for you to understand and inculcate and relate to the 7 virtues that the book is talking about. So you will definitely like reading this book, and you can also relate to this book in many aspects. The book I want you all to read is by a very famous author. The book is called The Bachelor of Arts by R.K. Narayan. Now basically this author is one of my most favorites right from the days of my childhood. I discovered that he is one person who I can look up to know stories about how it was during the periods of my grandpa growing up. So the book The Bachelor of Arts is basically about an Indian family during the post-colonial period, how it was, how the society was. The book The Bachelor of Arts is basically about a family in India. It's more of a rendition of the author himself. He's taken inspiration from his life. It talks about a lot of personal stuff. He's got a very conservative family. Conservative parents. He does his arts from a well-known college. He has very reliable friends, and he falls in love with a girl. Unfortunately, due to the conventional reasons at that point of time, he was not able to get married to her, and he falls into depression. He leaves his family and he runs away, but then he comes back and he decides that it is not the right thing to do, and he decides to get married according to the wishes and rules of his father and mother, that is the conventional arranged marriage. So he realizes that he falls in love with this girl, and he talks about the life and the journey of the couple. Now, what I consider extremely important about this author and many of the other books that he has written is that most of his books are during the period of post-colonial duration. So this is about the period when our grandparents were growing up, when our grandparents were getting settled down, and our parents were beginning to emerge. So this will make us understand a lot about the period when they grew up, the financial circumstances, a lot of the economic conditions they had, a lot of opportunities they had, a lot of freedom, the societal pressure, and a lot of that. So it will be easier for us to understand the opportunities we have and they had. So it is an extremely interesting read, and I highly recommend you all to read this awesome book. The next book is by my favorite author, Preeti Shenoy, and the book is called Life is What You Make It. Now, I am highly obsessed with her because of her extremely easy and unconventional writing style. So this book is all about the female lead going through a lot of troubles in her life, and how she falls into a clinical depression, and how her family is helping her to come out of the medical condition. So what I love about Preeti Shenoy is that she always talks about unconventional topics which are rarely talked about in Indian society. So she tries to bring in the idea of parents trying to have a conversation about the mental health with their children, and the children being able to look up to their parents for medical support. So this is a very important book from that point of this is a very important book in that aspect, and I highly recommend you all to read because it will be extremely easy, and you can also relate to this book because it has a lot of similarities with your life. You will realize that you find a lot of similarities with your lifestyle when you read this book. So I highly recommend reading this book. The next book is also by Preeti Shenoy. It's called 100 Little Flames. Now, this book is the latest book that I have read, and I'm already obsessing about it because this talks about another unconventional love story. Now, when we talk about a love story, we always imagine a hero in teens and a heroine, and what they go through is about the relationship between a grandfather and his grandson. So, I love this book because I could relate to it in many terms. So, in this story, the hero is brought up from a well to do family in a city, and due to some circumstances, he loses his job and he is thrown to a situation where he has to stay with his grandfather, who is living in a village. Though he is initially not willing to stay in a village because of the lack of facilities that he has been brought up with, he decides to go and live with his grandfather, who was living alone with a servant for several decades. You will realize many of the aspects of growing up, and it is an important book because it will help you understand what goes through the minds of your parents, your grandparents, and how the relationship progresses after the children get married, how the relationship progresses after the children get married, how it becomes after they have kids, and what is the relationship between the grandchildren and the grandparents. It also especially talks about first love that you have during your school time. It also talks about the loss of a loved one. It also talks about a very important relationship between the father and a son. So it is a very important book, I consider, because it is in at many points of time in Indian society, the way we are brought about is that parents always take about I consider this book a very important. I consider this a very important book because in most of the Indian families, the parents take utmost care to provide with their children all the important facilities and opportunities for them to grow up to be highly successful. But the children are not taught as to how they have to look up to the needs, and the children are not taught up as to how they have to look up to the needs of their parents, and what they might need when they grow old, and the process of aging has never been explained so well. So in this book you will see the various stages of a young man, the grandfather initially during his school days, how he was during his college days, how he was forced into a marriage that he was not interested in, how he decided to fall in love with a girl who he did not actually like, how his relationship grew with his child, with his son and daughter, how he decides to lead his life, and all the circumstances that life throws up to him. So this is a beautiful book that I wish you never miss reading in your lifetime. So please consider reading this book. And finally, the last book I want you all to read is The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. Now, this book is about a Bengali family getting settled in America. So the father is basically extremely happy about the number of opportunities he can give his son and daughter, while the mom is extremely unhappy because they will be losing contact with the Indian culture. So as the mom fears, the children are not very happy about the Indian culture, and they're falling in love with the American culture. Now the son is being named after a book which apparently helps save the life of his father. You should check out the book to actually know how the book actually helps saving the life of the father. I will not be telling that. Never mind. So the son does not have a very good relationship with the name, with his Indian tradition, and with his parents. So he decides to change his name, and he dates a number of women. He dates a number of women from the Western culture, and he decides to live in with them. He abandons his family, but at one point of time he learns that his father has passed away, and he's thrown into a shock. He decides to come back to his mom and sister, and gets great solace from the Indian culture and the Bengali family. Out of peer pressure from his mom, he decides to date a Bengali woman who has a similar background, who is from a Bengali family and has decided to settle in America. So he finds a lot of similarities between them, and he decides to get married to her. apparently he's not very happy with his married life, and he's not very happy with the relationship and with himself. So if you read through the story, it is talking about a lot of troubles that he has within himself and with others, because of the balance that is existing between him within himself and the outside world. Now, why I consider this book extremely important is because a number of families are getting settled in different parts of the world. Now, when you are suddenly thrown into a culturally different part of the world, you will be into a culture shock, and that will bring about a lot of problems within yourself and with a number of relationships across your lifetime. So this book is all about how this boy is trying to find the proper balance with his Indian culture and the new background, the new culture that he's being exposed to, and how he finally decides to love himself for how he has been brought about, and be grateful for all the opportunities that he has been provided with. So this is a beautiful book. It ends with a very positive note, and you will all highly relate to this. So please consider reading this book. Folks, these are the 7 books that I highly recommend you all to read, and I hope you will all enjoy them. Do comment down below what were your favorite books, and also suggest some of the books that you think I should also consider reading. I will also link down below all of the books that I have mentioned here, so that it will be easier for you to check them out. Mention my Instagram handle below, because I will be talking about, I will actually be rambling about some of the current books I am reading, what I love about them, what I hate about them, and what I actually like reading about them. So it is all about books, and you will also see a lot of my personal life. So see you guys in another video, and until then, stay safe, take care, bye bye, and happy reading.